Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Mugshots. And today I am joined by writer Anna Willett, who has kindly joined us from Australia, where it's 6 o'clock her time at the moment. So she's just putting the finishing touches to her day. Now, if you, like me, want to find out more about Anna and her books, you will find everything below the video here or in the podcast notes, depending on where you're listening, underneath, and you can find all her books there. So welcome, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to see you. Could I ask you to start off by telling me a little bit about your books?
My books are all thrillers, and they vary from action thrillers to detective thrillers and include domestic noir.
Right. Okay. So how many books are there out there with your name on?
13 at the moment. I'm working on number 14.
Right. Okay. And when were you first published then?
My first book it wasn't my first book I'd written, but the first book I had published was in 2016.
Wow. So you've been really prolific since then.
Yeah, I've been busy. I had written another book that I put away that I since rewrote and had published. But yeah, I've been really busy.
Wow, that's amazing. And you have a real selection then of different styles and genres within the genre, as it were, then.
Yes, that's right. Within the thriller genre, there's a few different types. The most recent one, Dear Neighbour, is what would probably be classified as domestic noir, which I enjoy writing very much because they usually feature the female characters and the danger from within, which I love.
I love the title of that. Immediately I'm drawn to that. So that will be the one that I look up then.
Oh, good.
Fabulous. So when did you actually start writing then?
I've been writing since I was in school, short stories. Back then it was mostly horror, probably because I didn't know very much about crime. And then I sort of put it all on hold while I was studying and having a family. But then probably about 9 or 10 years ago, I started writing short stories again and decided to take it really seriously. And I was very fortunate that I found a publisher who was willing to take a chance on my book and found a happy home there so far.
So who is your publisher?
The Book Folks.
Right. Okay. So yeah, fabulous. And now, obviously, you're in Australia, but these days it doesn't matter, I suppose, where you are with publishers.
No, not these days, because it's all done online anyway. It's all done electronically. So it doesn't really matter, only in terms of the time difference sometimes when you're going back and forth about something.
Yeah. So I guess there might be the odd long delay over something while you're waiting for someone to wake up.
Yeah, 10 hours.
That is absolutely amazing, though. That number of books in such a short period of time. I mean, are you just sitting and churning them out one after the other? Have you got ideas bubbling away in your head all the time?
I have so many ideas, so many plot lines that I've, queued one behind the other, that by the time I get to the 3/4 mark on the book I'm working on, I'm thinking about the next one and can't wait to start that story. But I do make myself take about 2 or 3 weeks off in between just to stop for a while. But also I took a little bit of time off work after the first one so I could really give it a good nudge, because I knew I wanted to get really serious about this once I'd had the first one published, and I wanted to have a few things that I'd written ready to go. And I'm fortunate because my daughters are quite grown up now that I have more time to do that sort of thing.
Right. Okay. So how do you make it work for you then? Are you sitting and writing almost all day to get that volume of books out?
No, not really. I don't write in the morning. I usually write in the afternoon, and then I'll write, take a break, do other things, come back, write a little bit more in the evening. And then sometimes I actually get up out of bed at like 12:30 because something's come to me and I have to go and write it. And I'll get back in bed and go to sleep.
Oh my goodness, that is dedication. So are you one of these people then that keeps a notebook of all the ideas of the things that you want to do next?
Yes. I keep all the ideas, all my ideas for stories, titles, character names. I keep a list of them. I'm looking at that list yesterday and I was thinking, oh yeah, I've got this great idea for a story. And then I was looking at all the ones ahead of it.
Oh, I see. So you actually do put them in a queue as to what's to be written.
Yeah, but then I might pick one out and think, no, that's got to be the next one if it's really like burning in my brain for me to write it.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. I love how writers' brains work like that. So what is it that comes to you first then? Is it the characters or is it the crime story?
It's sort of the crime and the main character come together, almost like they're holding hands, and they come together, and it sort of has to be, well, if there was a woman who was, say, a hairdresser and she'd come through difficult relationships and financial situations, and then what if her ex-husband was murdered? And then how would she react to that and what would she do? It sort of comes like that.
Right. Okay. So you start with a what if and then expand it thereafter.
Yeah. And then the what ifs grow and grow. And, how can I make that worse?
Oh, your poor characters. Fantastic. So whereabouts where do your ideas come from? If you've got that many bubbling around in your head, is it just something you see, something you read?
Sometimes I don't know where they come from. They come out of nowhere and they just grow in my mind. The most recent book, Dear Neighbour, it actually came because of our very elderly neighbours. We were next door helping them with something, and they're such a lovely couple. And then I went home and I thought, what a lovely couple. What if they weren't as lovely as they seem? What if there was something sinister or a dark past? And then I thought, well, what if I had something as well, a secret that I was burying, and we came together because we were neighbours?
Oh, I see. Do your neighbours know that they gave you this idea?
No. No, they don't.
Oh, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Right. Well, hopefully they won't be watching this then.
No, hope not. Yeah, that when I say elderly, I mean like 90.
Right. Yes. Fantastic.
They are lovely.
Yes, they really don't have any nasty secrets.
No, they don't have a murderous past at all.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, you're obviously published with the book folks. Had you gone direct to them, or did you find yourself an agent first and then find them?
No, I went directly to the book folks. As I say, I had written another book, it was a horror novel, and I shopped it around a little bit without any success. So I put it away and went for the crime novel that was like foremost in my mind. And I wrote that, and it was picked up by the book folks. They were the first publisher I showed it to.
Oh, wow, that's marvelous. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was really very fortunate.
And we're always told that crime is the big growing genre, that there are lots of writers out there, lots of readers out there who are devouring these books, these crime books. I'm not quite sure what that says about us, really, that we
I know.
but it must be a really crowded marketplace. So yeah, how do you make yourself stand out?
I don't know. I mean, it is a crowded marketplace, but there are so many genres and subgenres within crime. There's so many different niches for you to find within crime. I mean, I know cozy mysteries are huge, and so I don't know how you'd stand out in that, but I think you have to sort of find your niche, find the sort of crime writing audience or reading audience that's looking for your sort of books, and really just keep at it, keep producing, keep writing the best work you can, keep having them out there, and hopefully people find you. And I think they do. I feel like a lot of readers have found me, and I have a lot of people contact me and saying they're reading all my books. It's really probably more if you can, if someone will read one of them and it's what they're looking for, then as long as you've got more to offer, that's it.
Right, right. Yes, I see. And when you start out with your book, do you know what subgenre it falls into? Are you writing for that subgenre, as it were?
Yes, I know. When I start out, I know exactly what sort of thriller I want it to be, where I want it to fall, how long I want it, the word count, all those sorts of things. I usually have a pretty good idea of what everything that's going to happen, but sometimes the characters lead me in a different direction and it changes a little bit throughout the book, and there are some surprises. I find them a surprise that come out of what I'm writing.
I love to hear that when people say that they're writing and a little surprise will suddenly come out. That must be really good fun to develop. Yeah, yeah.
It's great fun. It's a great moment when you think, oh, that's what I could do.
Yes, I can see that, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So so you've written all sorts of subgenres. Is that to allow you to engage with different readers, or is that to keep you feeling fresh?
It's more for myself. Also, I like to give the readers what they want, but it's more, this is where my ideas have taken me. And so while I love the action thrillers, then I've had ideas that go in another direction, and I want to explore that sort of subgenre and see where that takes me.
Right, right. Yes, yes, Hesky. So why do you think that the crime genre is quite as popular and fast growing as it is?
I was thinking about that, and I think that it's got a lot to do with streaming services. So you can binge watch an entire documentary series, a true crime documentary series. You can download on your Kindle 10 books by your favorite author and read through them. You can listen to a book on your way to work. You can listen to a crime podcast when you're in the car. So it's all around us, and it's more accessible than it's ever been before. And I think it's reaching a lot of people that probably wouldn't have picked up a book, will listen to a podcast, and that might lead them to a book.
Yes.
And so I think, yeah, it's so easy for us to find out, read about crime. And with all these streaming services and documentaries, there are a lot of very famous crime cases that people may not have heard of before, that they're now watching documentaries about, and that gets them interested in crime.
Yeah, yeah. And then they might go and pick up a book that is similar in vein.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also it's a fascinating genre, I think. It's that sort of meeting place of escapism and realism.
Yeah. And do you drop clues throughout your books to allow people to start to work out who done it?
Yes, I drop in clues. I drop in little clues about what's happening to the characters, about little twists, about clues to the twists and who did what. I don't know if people pick them all up, because my husband always reads my books before I send them anywhere else. And sometimes I say, did you pick up on that? And he's like, no.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think sometimes when I'm reading a crime novel, I might not necessarily pick up on a clue, but something in the subconscious leads you to who done it, doesn't it? So
it does. And I think it was the sun.
Don't tell me about Dear Neighbor. I want to find out myself. So Now, obviously, you are following in the footsteps of many great women crime writers. I mean, obviously, Agatha Christie and P.D. James and Ruth Rendell and Martina Cole. And there seem to be an awful lot of women writing in the crime genre.
Mm.
What do you think that we bring to crime that perhaps a man doesn't necessarily? Do we have different voice? Is it a different way of looking at things?
I think women have a different voice when they're writing. I can tell. I think I can always tell when it's a woman. I know who the author is, but I get that feel that it's a woman. I can tell when it's a man. I find their books I like, but I find things like Jack Reacher books are very masculine in the way they're written, and that comes through the writer's voice. It's very masculine. The same with Michael Connelly, who I love. He's a wonderful writer. I can tell it's a man, and I think, I'm not going to generalize with all men or all women, but I think that the women I know are very empathetic, and so we sort of can feel for the victim, feel for the family of the victim, feel for the criminal and their family as well. So that helps you with all the perspectives that you need to write about. And also, I think, I know for myself, I'm sort of very taken up with the little details. If someone tells me someone said something, I want to know, how did they say it? How did they look? What did they mean when they said that? What was it that might have made them say something like that? So I'm always looking at all the little details. And oftentimes I find, I don't know about with all men, but some men, they say, I don't know. I don't know what they meant by that.
But we do.
Yeah, but women are like, well, that's what I want to know, what, and how did they look when they said it?
Yes, because that, if you're watching something on television, a crime novel adapted, you can pick up things so much from people's expressions and their movements as they're speaking. So yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think women nitpick at all these things a little bit to get to the bottom of everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's fabulous. I mean, it really is an equal sport, isn't it? Crime writing.
Yeah.
So you're up there with all the men selling your books and what have you. I mean, obviously, that I take it that the book folks do most or a lot of the marketing for your books. So you can sort of hand over a lot of that to them.
I do some of it myself. I like and enjoy doing that sort of thing. They do a lot of it, but I do get involved in that sort of thing. I have a newsletter. I'm on Facebook, BookBub, Goodreads, Twitter, Instagram, website. So I like getting involved in all of that.
Right. Okay. Gosh, I can't believe you find time for the writing with all the.
No, there's so many things now, and I'm
Yes.
sort of like, that's it. I'm not spreading myself over anything else.
No. What do you find works best for you in terms of marketing? I'm just thinking of those who might want to self-publish.
I think Twitter lately has been more successful than Facebook. It's easier to get followers. It's quicker, easier to post, becoming more popular. The newsletter is quite successful, and I find if you can make some author friends in the same genre around the world and swap newsletter posts, so have them include your book in their newsletter and theirs in yours, that's always a big boost as well.
Right, that's a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you've got lots of crime writer friends then, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So which crime writers would you recommend other people to read, other than your books, of course?
I really enjoy reading Michael Robotham.
Oh, right.
I think he's a fantastic writer. I like Michael Connelly because as he was a crime reporter, so there's a very realistic quality to his books. Who else do I read? got it written down here somewhere. I haven't got my glasses on. I read so many books. I read every night as well before I go to sleep.
Oh, do you?
Yes, yes. Who else have I been reading lately? A.J. Finn, The Woman in the Window. That's a fantastic book if anyone's looking for a good read.
Right.
Jane Harper, she's an Australian writer. She wrote The Dry, that's been made into a film. I don't know if you've heard of that film in the UK.
I haven't, but what did you say it was called?
The Dry?
The Dry.
Yes, like a drought.
Ah, right. Okay. I shall look her up then as well. Yeah,
yes, she's fantastic.
Good. Right.
Yes.
Right. Fantastic. So some good ones there to look
up.
Yeah. Read.
There's so many.
Yeah. Which
and
is
I'd also say if you haven't tried Thomas Harris, really jump in and read his books. Even if you've seen the films, it's well worthwhile reading his books.
Yeah. Books are so very different, aren't they?
They certainly are. Yes. I always enjoy the book more than the film.
Yeah, I do as well. Absolutely. So which of your books are you most proud of?
I think I'm proud of the first one, which was called Backwoods Ripper, because it's the first one that I had published and it was picked up so quickly. And I'm very proud of the fact that that happened, and I'm very fortunate. So I'm really proud of that book. But it was probably the third book, which is Unwelcome Guests, where I started to feel like I was really developing a readership. So I have a bit of a soft spot for that one.
Right. So what's that one about?
It's about a young couple with a rocky marriage who are taken on a weekend to an isolated cabin by the brother-in-law. And it's more of a big house that he says his someone he's worked for has allowed him to use. But what he's not telling them is he's using it without permission. And so their first night there, they go downstairs to the wine cellar and they find a hidden door. And then they hear noises behind the door. So it goes from bad to worse.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing as well. I don't know. I whenever I hear the ideas that crime writers who've been published come up with, I always think, oh, that is absolutely amazing. I would never in a month of Sundays thought of something like that. So where did you get the idea for that from? What popped into your head where that was concerned?
My husband and I like to travel around the southwest of Western Australia quite a bit for holidays and weekends away and things like that. And they're all such beautiful places, and it's not what people expect. It's not desert, it's forest and bush and beaches and rivers and wineries and things like that. But it's also very isolated a lot of the time, and you can imagine anything could happen in a lot of these places. You know, phone reception might not be great. It's hours and hours to drive to get somewhere. And whenever we go down there, I usually come back with an idea for something.
So are all your books set in Australia?
They're all set in Western Australia so far, yes.
Right, right. Because you know it so well, presumably.
Yes. And there's such a diverse place. You can go up north where it's getting hotter and it's all the beaches and things like that, or you can go down south where it's getting greener and colder and all the wineries and the forests and everything. So there's lots to choose from.
Right. Okay, so you sold me on Unwelcome Guests as well as Dear Neighbour.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I'm going to have a lot to read now, I can see, definitely. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, publishing deal. Is it possible to still break into crime? Does it pay? Or is there just so many crime writers out there that actually it's really tough?
Look, I think it does still pay. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of work. If you're doing it to come up with a winning formula. I don't know if it will work. It's got to be something you love, and you've got to be willing to work very, very hard and put a lot of time into it. Unless you're very, very fortunate, I can't see that the first one's going to pay off that much. But once you've got more out there to sell, it's more worthwhile. When you only have one book out there, there's not a lot to really sell.
Yeah, yeah.
You want them to have that follow-on effect with the books, but I definitely think it pays. And I think that there's a huge audience for crime, and it's always growing, and younger people are getting into it because of, you know, all the social media platforms. They're hearing about books. So it does pay, but it's hard work.
Right, yeah, because so many people would think, well, how can it possibly be hard work? You just sit at a computer and churn out ideas and words and things.
Yes.
There's so much more to it as well, really, isn't there?
There really is. And there's a lot of time spent writing, a lot of time spent at the computer, a lot of time with non-writing but writing related work, you know, to do with different social media platforms and newsletters and websites and fixing things up on websites. And then there's, you know, back and forth about book covers and titles and things like that. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that goes into it.
Do you come up with the idea? Do you come up with the titles?
I came up with Dear Neighbour. Some of them I've come up with, but usually I come up with one and we'll go back and forth a little bit with my publisher and come up with something together.
Right.
But
right.
I think the last 4 I've come up with the title for.
Right. Okay. Now, obviously, you're immersed in crime and sinister ideas in your head, but is there a crime that you wouldn't cover in your books?
No, there's not a crime I wouldn't cover, but as a mother, there's some places I wouldn't go. So there are crimes that I would cover, but I probably wouldn't describe in any detail. There are some things I would describe in great detail, but there are other things which I've been careful to not describe in detail, not to glamorize or make them salacious, and concentrate more on the reactions of everyone around that crime, which is often, you know, what the real crux of it is.
Yeah.
Whereas with other crimes, you know, I am quite gritty and realistic and grim, but yeah, as a mother and a pet lover, I wouldn't go into details about some things.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Having joined various different book clubs and on social media and what have you, I see a lot of people posting about, you know, I don't mind gritty crime, but I wouldn't read anything where an animal is harmed.
I'm like that. I'm so like that. If I start watching a film or reading a book and there's a dog, I get a little bit reticent, and I'm like, if something happens to this dog, I'm out.
Yes, I have actually turned off TV shows and films. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
I have described someone has hurt an animal in some detail, and in my latest book, something does happen to a dog, but I don't go into any description, and we don't know the dog, and it's enough to just say the animal was mutilated. I could not, and my daughters would never forgive me if I said too much about a dog being hurt.
Yeah.
And my 2 dogs wouldn't forgive me.
Because of course they'd know.
Yeah, they'd sense it.
Oh, it is funny how we work, isn't it?
It is. It's like the whole family can get it, but not the dog.
But you're absolutely right, actually. In many ways, we don't need those crimes that well described. It is people's reactions, isn't it, that we're looking for?
Yes, the reactions of the people investigating it, the family, those around, they tell us probably more about the crime than if we gave the details.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that, definitely. Now, getting towards the end of our chat, I do always ask for top 3 tips for budding crime writers. So I'm really excited to hear what yours might be.
Well, the first one's probably the most common advice, which is read, and read a lot. Don't just read in your genre, although you'll need to read a lot in the genre, the crime genre that you're choosing. But also, I'll read a lot of crime, then I'll read something like Thousand Splendid Suns and Stephen King, because it's important to read and know about building relationships in books, building them, breaking them down. And why I bring up Stephen King is because while he is the master of horror, he's also a master at creating unlikely friendships and friendship groups. And if you read him for nothing else but that, you'll take a lot out of it as a writer. And my next advice is everyone asks me, everyone who knows I write, people who write to me ask me and say, I want to write a book, but I don't know how. And I always say, just write chapter 1 and start writing. And don't worry if you don't know how to format or you're not sure how to write. There's plot holes. Just write the whole thing, because if you don't have it, you can't fix it. Once you've got it on paper, you can fix it. Even if it takes you 3 years, you can fix that. And finally, it's as I said, don't try and write the winning formula. Just write what you love writing, because it comes through in the writing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And not, I mean, you might fall into the trap, I suppose, of copying someone else's style,
Yes.
which isn't your natural style.
Yes. And it's never as much fun if you're forcing yourself to do something you don't really want to do.
Right.
And
yeah.
if you're not having fun, oftentimes it's going to come through in the writing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, definitely. And I agree with you about the just sit down and write it and get it done, because I'm a terrible procrastinator, and I can quite happily get myself up to 40,000 words and then suddenly go, oh no, it's all a disaster, and go back and start again.
Oh,
no idea how I stop myself from doing that. And
no, don't do that.
Can't fix the rest of it if I haven't written it, can I?
That's it. You can't fix it if you don't have it. You can always work on it. You can have someone else help you with it. You can get editors, format people, but you've got to have it there to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. So your first book, actually, going back to that, did you give it to your husband and say, read that, or did you go out and find someone externally to read it before you sent it to the book folks?
I gave it to my husband and he read it. And I gave it to both my grown-up daughters and they both read it. And they all liked it, but, I expected them to say they liked it. I'd have been surprised if they said they didn't. So I sort of had to take a chance and think, I think it's good. I think it's enjoyable. I'm going to shop it around and see what happens. But luckily, the first person I gave it to liked it and they took a chance on it. So I hadn't given it to people outside the family to read.
Right. Do you now have a publishing schedule? So you're expected to provide 2 or 3 books a year for the book folks, or how does that work?
No, I don't have a publishing schedule, but I usually provide 2 a year at least. So my publisher will contact me and say, I was thinking that you might have one coming up soon, and I'll sort of say, I'm halfway through, I'm 3/4 of the way through, you can expect something in this month, June or July, whatever it is, so he knows with their schedule when they can work on it.
Right, so you're setting your own deadlines then, but they know that you're always working on something.
Yes, they know I am. And yeah, oftentimes, not at the moment, I'm working on something, but oftentimes I'll have something already written that I've got sitting there as well.
Right. So they can come to you if they've got a gap and you might have something ready to go.
Sometimes that's happened, yes. But at the moment, no, I haven't got anything. I'm working on it.
You must be the ideal client if you can do that sort of thing. So,
Oh, I hope so.
yeah.
That you heard that? I'm the ideal client.
Yes, we'll tell them that. Oh, marvelous. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and having a chat about your books and crime and what have you. Is there anything else that you particularly wanted to add and tell anyone about either your books or writing generally?
No, just if you're interested in reading a good thriller and you'd like to find out a little bit more about Western Australia, you can read my books, Anna Willett's books. Find me on Amazon, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Well, again, all the links to Anna's books are below here or on the podcast notes. So please do look her up. I will certainly be purchasing Unwelcome Guests and Dear Neighbour because they just sound amazing and right up my street.
Thank you.
Really enjoy reading those. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.